I thought wearing a cheap suit to my wife's elite gala would be the most humiliating moment of my life, until her billionaire mentor made me the punchline in front of everyone who mattered. What he didn't know was that the mansion he built his empire on, the very ground he stood on while mocking me, legally belonged to me. My wife's silence that night told me everything I needed to know about where her loyalties lay. But when I discovered her betrayal went deeper than I imagined, I realized this wasn't just about a deed, it was about showing them that power doesn't always announce itself with money. Some men built empires on borrowed ground, and I was about to remind them who really owned it. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because what happened next changed everything. The suit hung on the back of the bedroom door like a question I didn't want to answer. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, razor in hand, and studied my reflection. 32 years old, strong jaw, eyes that had seen too many long days under the sun. My father's nose, my mother's serious mouth. I'd bought the suit 3 years ago for a cousin's wedding. Navy blue, off the rack from a department store. It fit well enough. The fabric was decent. The jacket didn't pull at the shoulders when I moved. For a construction foreman's salary, it was a good suit. But I knew what tonight was. Tonight wasn't about good enough. Marcus, have you seen my phone charger? Evelyn's voice drifted from the bedroom. I heard her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She was already dressed, already perfect. She'd been ready for an hour, pacing and making calls, her voice bright and sharp like cut glass. Kitchen counter, I called back. I rinsed my face and reached for the towel. My hands were clean, but I could still see the faint stains on my knuckles. Years of work leave marks that soap can't wash away. I'd scrubbed hard this morning, used the brush, but the evidence remained. Working man's hands. I pulled on a white undershirt and walked back into the bedroom. Evelyn stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, one hand gesturing as she spoke. The evening light caught her blonde hair, making it glow. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than my truck payment. Elegant, expensive. Everything about her screamed money and class. She'd always been beautiful. That hadn't changed. What had changed was harder to name. Absolutely, Grant. We'll be there by 7. Yes, I'm bringing Marcus. She glanced at me, her smile flickering. Of course. See you tonight. She ended the call and slipped her phone into a small clutch purse. Grant's excited to see us, she said. Grant Holloway, her mentor, her boss, technically, though their relationship went deeper than that. He'd invested in her tech startup 5 years ago, turned her little software idea into a multi-million-dollar company. Now she sat on his board. Now she attended his galas. Now she belonged to a world I'd never asked to enter. That's nice, I said. I reached for the suit. The pants first, then the shirt. White, pressed this morning before my shift. I'd been careful with it all day. Evelyn watched me dress. I could feel her eyes on my back, measuring, evaluating. When I turned around, she was looking at her phone again. You're wearing that suit? She asked. Her tone was light, casual, like it didn't matter. Yeah, I said. It's just. She paused. This is a pretty formal event. It's a suit. I know. I just thought maybe you'd want to wear something a little more, I don't know, updated. I buttoned my shirt slowly. When would I have bought a new suit, Evelyn? I could have taken you shopping. You've been busy. I know, I'm sorry. She crossed the room and adjusted my collar, her fingers quick and efficient. It's fine. You look nice. Really? But her eyes told a different story. I'd known Evelyn for 7 years, married for 4. I'd met her at a coffee shop near the construction site where I was working. She'd been struggling with her laptop, frustrated and close to tears. I'd offered to help, even though I didn't know much about computers. We'd talked for 2 hours. She'd loved that I was different from the men in her world. Grounded, she'd called me. Real. Now being different felt like being wrong. What time do we need to leave? I asked. Soon, 20 minutes, I finished dressing in silence, tied my tie, navy, simple, slipped on my dress shoes, the leather stiff from sitting in the closet too long. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. I looked like exactly what I was, a blue-collar man in a cheap suit. "You ready?" Evelyn asked. She stood by the door, car keys in hand. "Yeah." We drove in her car, a sleek German sedan, silver with leather seats that still smelled new. She'd bought it 6 months ago after a big contract came through. I'd told her it was too much. She'd laughed and said I worried too much about money. I didn't worry about money. I worried about the distance it created. The estate was 40 minutes outside the city, tucked into rolling hills that turned gold in the evening light. We passed through iron gates that opened automatically. The driveway curved through manicured gardens and old oak trees. "Wow," I said quietly. "Grant's owned this place for 15 years, Evelyn said. "It used to be some old industrialist's summer home. He renovated everything. Must have cost a fortune." "Several." The main house came into view, 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within like a jewelry box. Cars lined the circular driveway. Luxury vehicles, each one worth more than I'd make in 5 years. Valets in white jackets directed traffic. Evelyn pulled up and handed her keys to a young man who couldn't have been older than 20. He nodded politely and drove off. "Stay close to me tonight, okay?" Evelyn said, squeezed my hand. "I know these things can be overwhelming." "I'll be fine." "I know you will. Just try to enjoy yourself." We walked toward the entrance. Other couples moved around us, laughing, greeting each other with the easy familiarity of people who belonged. The women wore gowns that sparkled. The men wore tuxedos that fit like they'd been painted on. I felt every thread of my department store suit. Inside, the foyer opened into a grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. A string quartet played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. Everything gleamed. "Evelyn." A woman in red swept toward us, arms extended, tall, thin, with sharp cheekbones and perfectly styled dark hair. Evelyn hugged her warmly. "Lydia, you look amazing," Evelyn said. "So do you, darling. And this must be Marcus. Lydia Holloway, Grant's wife. I'd seen her in photos but never met her in person." She extended a hand and I shook it, gently. "Nice to meet you," I said. "Likewise." Her smile was polite but distant. Her eyes flicked over my suit for just a second, then back to my face. "Grant's been looking forward to meeting you properly. He's around here somewhere." "I'll find him," Evelyn said. "Come on, Marcus." We moved through the crowd. Evelyn stopped every few steps to greet someone: investors, board members, other tech entrepreneurs. She introduced me each time. "This is my husband, Marcus." But the conversations never included me. They talked about funding rounds and market shares and acquisition strategies. I stood beside her and nodded when it seemed appropriate. After the fifth introduction, a waiter passed with champagne. I took a glass just to have something to hold. "Marcus Reed." The voice came from behind me, deep, confident, used to being heard. I turned. Grant Holloway stood there with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Mid-40s, silver at his temples, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost what I made in a month. He held a glass of scotch in one hand. "Mr. Holloway," I said. "Grant, please. We're practically family." He extended his hand. His grip was firm, calculated. "Evelyn talks about you all the time. Good things, I hope." "Of course." He glanced at Evelyn, who'd turned to face us. "You've been hiding him away, Evelyn. I was starting to think he didn't exist." "Marcus works long hours," Evelyn said quickly. "He doesn't usually make it to these events." "Construction, right?" Grant asked. "Foreman," I said. "Important work." Somebody's got to build the buildings, right? He chuckled. A few people nearby smiled politely. That's right, I said. Grant's eyes dropped to my suit, just for a moment, then back to my face. Well, I'm glad you could make it tonight. Enjoy yourself. The bar's open. Food's good. Make yourself comfortable. He patted my shoulder and walked away, already turning to greet someone else. Evelyn touched my arm. See? That wasn't so bad. I didn't answer. We moved to the terrace for cocktail hour. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The terrace overlooked the grounds, acres of perfectly trimmed grass, gardens, a reflecting pool that caught the dying light. This place is incredible, Evelyn said. She sipped her champagne and smiled at the view. I watched her face. She looked happy here, comfortable, like she'd found where she was meant to be, and I was the thing that didn't quite fit. Grant's voice rose above the crowd behind us. I heard him laugh, that big, confident sound that made people turn their heads. He was surrounded by a group of men in tuxedos, all of them holding glasses, all of them leaning in to catch his words. So I told him, if you can't afford the table, don't sit at the restaurant. Laughter rippled through the group. That's the problem with this generation, one of the men said. Everyone thinks they deserve a seat without earning it. Exactly, Grant said. You can always tell who belongs and who doesn't. It's in the details. He glanced over and his eyes landed on me. Just for a second. Then he smiled and continued talking. My jaw tightened. Evelyn hadn't heard. She was talking to a woman I didn't know, something about a conference in San Francisco. I stood there with my champagne and tried to look like I belonged on this terrace, in this world, wearing this suit. But I didn't belong. And everyone knew it. Dinner was announced. We moved inside to a ballroom where round tables had been set with white linens and flowers and candles. Place cards guided people to their seats. I found ours, table 12, near the back. Evelyn frowned. That's strange. I thought we'd be closer to the front. Does it matter? I asked. No, I guess not. We sat down. The other people at our table introduced themselves, finance people mostly, a couple who owned an art gallery, a woman who ran a nonprofit. They were polite but uninterested. The conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. Grant stood at the front of the room and welcomed everyone. He thanked the donors, mentioned the charity the gala was supporting, made a few jokes that got big laughs. He was good at this, commanding, charismatic. When he finished, waiters brought the first course. I picked up my fork and tried to remember which one you were supposed to use first. Evelyn leaned close. Outside in, she whispered. What? The forks. Start on the outside and work your way in. Right. Thanks. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Halfway through the salad course, Grant appeared at our table. He'd been making rounds, stopping to talk to people, shaking hands. When he reached us, he put a hand on the back of my chair. Marcus, how's everything? Food okay? It's great, I said. Good, good. He glanced around the table. Everyone treating you well? Of course. Glad to hear it. He paused, then looked down at my jacket. You know, Marcus, I have to say, that's a bold choice. I looked up at him. What is? The suit. It's very authentic. He smiled. Not everyone can pull off that classic department store look. Takes confidence. Someone at the table laughed softly. My hands went still on my fork. Evelyn's face flushed. Grant, I'm serious, he continued. In a room full of designer labels, it's refreshing to see someone who's not afraid to be himself. Real working class aesthetic. I respect that. More laughter. Polite, quiet, but there. It's just a suit, I said. Of course it is, and you wear it well. Grant squeezed my shoulder. Enjoy your dinner. He walked away, already laughing about something with the people at the next table. I sat there, fork in hand, staring at my plate. Evelyn touched my arm. Marcus, don't, I said quietly. He didn't mean. Yes, he did. She pulled her hand back. Around us, the conversation at the table had resumed, but I could feel the glances, the careful way people avoided looking at me directly. I'd been reduced to a joke, and my wife had smiled nervously while it happened. I finished my salad in silence. Evelyn picked at hers. When the main course came, some kind of fish with vegetables I didn't recognize, I ate mechanically. The food tasted like nothing. After dinner, there were speeches, a presentation about the charity, more applause, more laughter. I sat there and watched the chandeliers above us sparkle like distant stars. When the speeches ended and people started moving toward the bar, I stood up. I need some air, I said. Marcus, wait, I'll be back. I walked away before she could follow. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter. I found a side room, some kind of study or library, lined with books and leather furniture. I closed the door behind me and stood there in the dim light, breathing. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom, my friend from work. How's the fancy party? I stared at the message and didn't reply. Another buzz, this time from Tom's wife, Rachel. Tell Evelyn we say hi. I put my phone away. On the desk, I noticed a folder. Thick, professional looking. I wouldn't have paid attention to it, except my name was on the tab. Marcus Reed. I picked it up and opened it. Inside were documents, legal papers, deeds, surveys. My eyes scanned the pages, trying to make sense of the technical language. Then I found it. Property deed, Grant Holloway Estate, and underneath, in smaller print, a note from the title company dated 3 years ago. Previous owner, Marcus J. Reed. Mineral rights and subsurface ownership retained per original 1947 covenant. I read it again. Then again. My grandfather had owned land out here. Farmland, mostly. He'd sold it piece by piece over the years when times got hard. I'd inherited the last parcel when he died. A small plot I'd never even visited. Too far out, too expensive to develop. I'd kept it because it was family land, because it meant something. I'd never known what had been built on top of it. The door opened behind me. Can I help you? I turned. Grant stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from polite to cold in the time it took him to recognize me. What are you doing in here? He asked. I held up the folder. Reading about my property. His face went pale. Grant stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. The click of the latch sounded too loud in the silence. That's a private file, he said. It has my name on it. You shouldn't be going through my desk. I set the folder down carefully. How long have you known? He didn't answer right away. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. Then, he moved to the desk and picked up the folder, closing it with a sharp snap. It's a technicality, he said. Some old covenant from before the land was properly subdivided. My lawyers have been working on it. Working on it? To resolve the title issue. It's not uncommon with properties this old. These things get cleaned up all the time. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The expensive tuxedo. The confident stance. The way he held himself like he owned everything in the room, including me. You built your estate on land I own, I said. You own subsurface rights to a parcel that's part of a larger property. It's complicated. Doesn't sound that complicated. Grant's face hardened. Listen to me carefully, Marcus. This is not something you want to make an issue of. The legal fees alone would bankrupt you, and even if you somehow won, which you wouldn't, you'd destroy your wife's career in the process. How would it destroy her career? Because I'd make sure it did. He said it simply, matter of fact. Evelyn's company exists because of my investment, my connections, my guidance. If you come at me with some petty land dispute, she'll be the one who suffers. Is that what you want? The room felt smaller suddenly, hotter. I'm not coming at you with anything, I said quietly. Good. Then We understand each other. Grant straightened his bow tie. I suggest you forget what you saw in that folder. Go back to the party, have another drink. Enjoy the rest of your evening. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Marcus, next time you want to go through someone's private documents, at least have the sense to wear a suit that makes you look like you belong in the room. He left, closing the door softly behind him. I stood there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then I pulled out my phone and took pictures of every page in that folder before I put it back exactly where I'd found it. When I returned to the ballroom, Evelyn was talking to Lydia near the bar. She saw me coming and her face brightened with relief. There you are. I was getting worried. Just needed a minute. Lydia studied me with those cool, assessing eyes. Everything all right? Fine, said. Good. She glanced at Evelyn. I should find Grant. He disappeared somewhere. You know how he is at these things. After she left, Evelyn touched my arm. What happened? Nothing. Marcus, I said nothing happened. She pulled her hand back. The music had started up again, something soft and elegant. Couples drifted onto the dance floor. Evelyn watched them, then looked at me. Do you want to dance? She asked. Not really. Okay. We stood there in awkward silence. A waiter passed with champagne and Evelyn took another glass, her third or fourth. I'd lost count. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For what? For Grant. What he said at dinner. It was inappropriate. Was it? Of course it was. Then why didn't you say something? She looked at me. What was I supposed to say? Anything. You could have said anything. He's my mentor, Marcus. My boss. I can't just... She stopped. You don't understand how these relationships work. No. I guess I don't. That's not what I meant. I think it is. Her eyes filled with tears, not sad tears, frustrated tears. Why are you being like this? Like what? Difficult. You knew what tonight was going to be like. You knew it would be awkward. But you're acting like I did something wrong. I stared at her. This woman I'd loved for 7 years. This woman I'd married. I searched her face for something. Shame, anger, solidarity. Anything that said she was on my side. All I saw was embarrassment. I want to go home, I said. We can't leave yet. It's too early. Then I'll get a cab. Marcus, please. I'll see you at home. I walked away before she could say anything else, made my way through the crowd, past the laughing people and the clinking glasses and the music that sounded like money, out into the foyer, down the steps, into the cool night air. The valet looked confused when I asked him to call me a cab. You're leaving already, sir? Yeah? Let me just... It might take a few minutes. That's fine. I waited at the edge of the driveway, away from the lights and the noise. Above me, stars filled the sky. Real stars, visible this far from the city. I'd forgotten what they looked like. My phone buzzed. Evelyn. Please come back inside. We can leave in an hour. I didn't reply. Another text. You're embarrassing me. I turned off my phone. The cab came 20 minutes later. I climbed in and gave the driver our address. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, this black man in a cheap suit leaving a mansion, but didn't ask questions. I watched the estate disappear behind us, swallowed by the darkness and the trees. At home, the house felt too big and too quiet. Evelyn had wanted this place. 4 bedrooms, modern kitchen, 2-car garage. It had stretched our budget to the breaking point, but she'd said it was important. An investment in our future. Now it just felt empty. I changed out of the suit and hung it back on the door. Put on jeans and a t-shirt. Made myself a sandwich I didn't eat. Sat on the couch in the dark living room and stared at nothing. Evelyn came home around midnight. I heard her car in the driveway, her heels on the front steps. The door opened, and she stood there in the light from the porch, still beautiful in that expensive dress. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." She closed the door and kicked off her heels, crossed the room and sat on the opposite end of the couch. We didn't look at each other. "That was really unfair," she said finally. "What was?" "Leaving me there like that, making me explain why my husband walked out in the middle of the gala. What did you tell them?" "That you weren't feeling well." "That's true enough." "Marcus, stop saying my name like that." "Like what?" "Like you're disappointed in me. Like I'm the problem." She turned to face me. "You are being difficult. You have been all night. From the moment we got in the car, you've had this attitude." "My attitude?" "Yes, your attitude. Like you were looking for reasons to be upset." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "Grant made fun of my suit in front of a table full of people, and you're mad at me?" "He was joking." "No, he wasn't. You're being too sensitive." "Am I?" "Yes." She stood up, agitated now. "This is exactly what I was worried about. I knew you'd feel out of place. I knew you'd take everything personally. He called me working class in a room full of millionaires. What part of that shouldn't I take personally?" "He didn't mean it as an insult." "Then what did he mean it as?" She didn't have an answer for that. Just stood there with her arms crossed, looking anywhere but at me. "You know what the worst part was?" I said quietly. "Not what Grant said, but the fact that you just sat there, you smiled, you didn't say a word. What was I supposed to do? Defend me? Tell him to stop, anything? I can't just snap at my boss, Marcus. You don't understand the position I'm in." "No, I don't. Grant controls everything, my funding, my connections, my reputation. If I offend him, I lose all of it. So you chose him over me. That's not fair, isn't it?" She sat back down, and I could see she was crying now, real tears this time. "I'm trying so hard to build something, to make something of myself, and you act like that's wrong, like I should apologize for wanting more." "I never said that." "You think it. I can see it every time you look at my car, my clothes, this house. You think I've changed. Haven't you?" She wiped her eyes. "I'm just being honest about who I am, about what I want." "And what do you want?" "Success, respect, a seat at the table." She looked at me. "Things you can't give me." The words hung between us like smoke. I stood up. "I'm sleeping in the guest room." "Marcus, good night, Evelyn." I walked away and didn't look back. The next morning, I woke to an empty house. Evelyn's car was gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Staying at Nina's for a few days. Needs space to think." Nina, her sister, the one who'd never liked me, who'd told Evelyn from the beginning that she was making a mistake marrying someone beneath her station. Those had been her actual words. Beneath her station. I crumpled the note and threw it away. Work was a relief. Physical. Simple. I spent the day on a job site, overseeing the framing of a new building downtown. My crew respected me. When I gave instructions, they listened. When I made decisions, they followed through. Nobody cared what suit I wore. Tom found me during lunch break. He sat on a stack of lumber and unwrapped a sandwich. "You look like hell," he said. "Thanks." "Rough night?" I told him about the gala. Not everything, just enough. The suit comment, Grant's attitude, the fight with Evelyn. Tom listened and chewed thoughtfully. "Rich people," he said finally. "Yeah. They think the world belongs to them." "Pretty much." He took another bite. "You still got that land your grandfather left you?" "The farmland?" "Yeah. Why? You ever look into what's on it?" I glanced at him. "Why are you asking?" "Because I'm a real estate broker and I pay attention to property records. And I remember when Grant Holloway bought that estate. Big news in the industry. historic property, massive renovation. But there was something weird about the title. My heart started beating faster. Weird how? Mineral rights weren't transferred. Subsurface ownership stayed with the original family. That's pretty unusual for a property that size. That's my family. Tom stopped chewing. What? The estate. It's built on my grandfather's old land. I found the deed last night. You're serious? Dead serious. He set down his sandwich. Marcus, do you understand what that means? Grant's lawyers are trying to clean it up. He said it's a technicality. It's not a technicality. It's leverage. Tom leaned forward. If you own the subsurface rights and the mineral rights, you could make his life very complicated. Depending on the covenant, you might even have claim to surface access. I don't want to make his life complicated. I just want him to treat me like a human being. Too late for that. He already showed you who he is. I looked at my hands, still stained, still marked by work. Evelyn said fighting him would destroy her career. Would it? He controls everything, her funding, her connections. So he's got her trapped. She doesn't see it that way. Tom picked up his sandwich again. What are you going to do? I don't know. Well, when you figure it out, let me know. I'm good with property law, and I'm even better at watching rich guys squirm. That night, I ate dinner alone. Evelyn didn't call, didn't text. I sat at our dining table with leftover pizza and looked at the photos I'd taken of Grant's documents. The covenant was from 1947. My great-grandfather had sold the surface rights but kept everything below ground. Smart for a farmer. You never knew when minerals might be worth something. The deed showed clear ownership. Marcus J. Reed. That was me. I zoomed in on one paragraph. Legal language mostly, but one sentence stood out. Surface access granted for purposes of maintenance and inspection of subsurface property. Surface access to Grant's estate. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Mr. Reed? This is Barbara Chen from Holloway Capital. I'm Mr. Holloway's attorney. I sat up straighter. Okay. Mr. Holloway mentioned you had some questions about a property matter. I'd like to schedule a time for us to meet and discuss this situation. Perhaps we can reach an amicable resolution. I didn't say I wanted to meet. Nevertheless, I think it would be in everyone's best interest. These title issues can become quite expensive if they're not handled properly. Is that a threat? It's a reality, Mr. Reed. Legal battles over property rights can drag on for years. They can be financially devastating. I'm sure you want to avoid that. I thought about Evelyn, about her company, about everything she'd worked for. Then I thought about Grant's smile when he'd mocked my suit. Tell Mr. Holloway I'll think about it, I said. I really think. I hung up. 3 days passed. Evelyn stayed at Nina's. She texted once to ask about mail. I told her it was on the counter. Work kept me busy. I threw myself into it, stayed late, took extra shifts, anything to avoid coming home to the empty house. Tom called on the 4th day. You free tonight? Why? Because I pulled the full title history on that property. You need to see this. We met at a bar near the waterfront. Tom brought a folder, thick with papers. He spread them across the table. Your great-grandfather was smarter than Grant's lawyers, he said. The covenant isn't just about mineral rights. It's about land use. According to this, any structure built on the property requires approval from the subsurface rights holder, which is me, which is you. But the estate's already built. Exactly, which means Grant built without proper authorization. Tom grinned. He violated the covenant. You could force him to tear it down. I stared at the papers. I'm not going to do that. You could. It would destroy Evelyn. It would destroy Grant. There's a difference. Not to her. Tom leaned back. So what's your play here? Just let him win? I didn't answer. I was thinking about the gala, about Grant's face when he saw me reading his files, about the way he'd threatened me, used my wife as leverage, about the way Evelyn had sat silent while he humiliated me. I don't want revenge, I said finally. I just want respect. Sometimes respect requires leverage, and sometimes it requires walking away. Tom studied me. You're really going to just let this go? I gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. I didn't say that. At home, I found Evelyn's car in the driveway. My stomach tightened. I wasn't ready for this conversation. Inside, she stood in the kitchen, making coffee. She'd changed clothes, jeans and a sweater, casual. She looked tired. Hi, she said. Hi. I came to get some of my things. Okay. She poured coffee into 2 mugs, slid one across the counter to me. A peace offering. Nina thinks I should file for divorce, she said quietly. My hand froze halfway to the mug. What do you think? I asked. I think, she paused. I think we want different things. Like what? You want simple, you want easy, you want a life where nobody judges you and nothing changes. That's not true, isn't it? She looked at me. You resent everything about my success. My car, my clothes, my career. You make me feel guilty for wanting more. I don't resent your success, Evelyn. I resent the way you let people treat me. Grant was joking. Stop defending him. Why do you hate him so much? Because he's arrogant, because he thinks money makes him better than everyone else, and because you care more about his opinion than mine. She set down her mug. That's not fair. Which part? All of it. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, the expectations. Grant believes in me. He's invested millions in my company. I can't just throw that away because he made one inappropriate comment. It wasn't one comment. It's his whole attitude, and you enable it. I enable it? Her voice rose. I'm trying to survive in a world that doesn't want me to succeed. Do you know how hard it is being a woman in tech? I have to be perfect. I have to be likable. I can't afford to make enemies. So, you make me the enemy instead. You're putting words in my mouth. Am I? She grabbed her mug and walked to the window, stood there with her back to me. Maybe Nina's right. Maybe we're just too different. Maybe we are. She turned around. Is that really what you want? To just give up? You're the one talking about divorce. Because I don't know what else to do. We can't keep going like this. Then stop choosing them over me. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. We stared at each other across the kitchen. Two people who'd once fit together, now strangers in their own home. I need more time, she said finally, to think about what I want. Take all the time you need. She left without taking any of her things. I sat alone in the kitchen and drank my coffee and thought about choices, about the choices we make without realizing it, about the moment when wanting more turns into needing too much, about the quiet way love dies when nobody's paying attention. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Grant, I deleted it without responding. A week went by, then 2. Evelyn stayed at Nina's. We texted about logistics, bills, mail, the lawn service. Nothing personal, nothing real, just the mechanics of two lives slowly separating. I went to work, came home, ate alone, slept alone. The house felt like a museum of our marriage. Her books on the shelf, her coffee mug in the cabinet, her sweater draped over the back of the couch, forgotten. I didn't move any of it. Tom called every few days to check on me. You doing okay? He'd ask. Yeah. You sure? Yeah. I wasn't okay, but I didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell someone that the life you built is crumbling and you're not sure if you should try to save it or just let it fall? On a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the gala, My phone rang during lunch break. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Hello? Marcus, it's Lydia Holloway. I stopped chewing. Mrs. Holloway. Please, call me Lydia. Do you have a moment? I'm on my lunch break. I'll be brief. I was wondering if you might be free for coffee this afternoon. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. About what? About my husband. And your wife. A pause. I think we have some things in common. My stomach dropped. What time? 4 o'clock? There's a cafe near your worksite, the Blue Door. Do you know it? I'll find it. Thank you, Marcus. She hung up. I sat there staring at my sandwich, not hungry anymore. The Blue Door was small and quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. I got there at 5 minutes to 4 and ordered a black coffee. Sat at a table near the back and waited. Lydia arrived exactly on time. She wore dark jeans and a cream sweater, sunglasses pushed up on her head. Without the gala dress and the jewelry, she looked younger, more human. She ordered tea and sat across from me. Thank you for coming, she said. I'm not sure why I'm here. Because I think you deserve to know the truth. She wrapped her hands around her cup. And because I'm tired of pretending I don't see what's happening. What is happening? My husband is having an affair with your wife. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'd known. Somewhere deep down, I'd known. But hearing it said out loud made it real. How long? I asked quietly. A few weeks. Maybe a month. Lydia looked down at her tea. It started after the gala. Or maybe it started before and the gala just accelerated things. I'm not sure anymore. How do you know? The same way wives always know. Late meetings, unexplained absences, the way he says her name. She smiled sadly. And because I hired a private investigator. Jesus, I have photos if you want to see them. No, I didn't think so. She sipped her tea. I'm telling you this because Grant is planning something. He's nervous about that property deed. He's been on the phone with lawyers constantly, and he's convinced Evelyn to help him. Help him how? I don't know exactly, but I heard them talking last week. Something about getting you to sign papers to resolve the title issue quietly. I sat back. So this whole thing is about protecting his investment. Yes. Lydia's eyes were hard. My husband doesn't do anything without a calculation. If he's having an affair with Evelyn, it's because it serves a purpose. And what purpose is that? Control, leverage, insurance. She shrugged. Take your pick. Grant doesn't see people, he sees assets and liabilities. Right now, Evelyn is an asset. You're a liability. Because I own the land. Exactly. I thought about Evelyn, about the texts she hadn't sent, the conversations we hadn't had, the way she'd stayed away for 3 weeks without fighting for us. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I'm tired of being complicit. Lydia's voice was steady. I've spent 15 years watching my husband manipulate people, ruin them. I've stayed quiet because it was easier, because I liked the lifestyle, because I convinced myself it wasn't my problem. What changed? I watched him humiliate you at that gala. I saw your face, and I saw Evelyn's face when she didn't defend you. She leaned forward. You deserve better than that. And honestly, so do I. What are you going to do? I'm going to divorce him. I've already filed the papers. He doesn't know yet. She smiled slightly. I wanted to give you a heads up first. Once Grant realizes he's losing half his assets, he's going to get desperate. And desperate men do dangerous things. You think he'd come after me? I think he'd come after anyone who threatens his empire, including you, especially you. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, people walked past the cafe window, normal people living normal lives. I envied them. Thank you for telling me, I said. You're welcome. Lydia stood up. For what it's worth, Marcus, I don't think Evelyn understands what she's involved in. Grant has a way of making people believe they want what he wants. She thinks she's making her own choices. But she's not. That doesn't make it better. No, it doesn't. She picked up her purse. Good luck. She left, and I sat there with my cold coffee and tried to process everything. My wife was having an affair with the man who'd humiliated me, the man who'd threatened me, the man who stood on land that belonged to me and acted like he owned the world. I pulled out my phone and called Tom. I need to see those documents again, I said. When? Tonight. Tom came to my house at 7 with his folder. We spread everything across the dining table: deeds, surveys, covenant language, title history. Walk me through it again, I said. Okay. Your great-grandfather sold the surface rights in 1947 but kept the subsurface rights and mineral rights. That's documented here. He pointed to a yellowed page. The covenant says any structure built on the property requires written approval from the subsurface rights holder, which Grant never got. Correct? He built without authorization. That's a violation of the covenant. What does that mean legally? It means you have grounds to challenge his ownership. At minimum, you could force a settlement. He'd have to pay you significant money to resolve the title issue. At maximum, Tom grinned, you could argue that his construction constitutes trespass and demand removal of the structures. Would that actually work? Maybe, probably not, but the threat of it would be enough to make him sweat. Legal battles like this can take years and cost millions. He'd want to settle. I studied the documents. What if I don't want money? Then what do you want? Good question. I thought about Evelyn, about Grant, about Lydia's warning. I want them to understand they don't control everything, I said finally. Tom nodded slowly. Okay, then here's what we do. We stayed up until midnight planning. Tom knew property law inside and out. He walked me through every option, every angle, every potential outcome. By the time he left, I had a strategy. It wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. It was about power, about showing them that money and connections weren't everything, that the land they stood on, the ground they took for granted, belonged to someone they'd underestimated. The next morning, I called a lawyer, not one of Grant's high-priced attorneys, a small firm that specialized in property rights. The lawyer's name was Janet Reeves, and Tom had recommended her. She's tough, he'd said, and she doesn't get intimidated by rich guys. Janet met me in her office that afternoon. Mid-50s, gray hair, sharp eyes. She listened while I explained the situation, looked over the documents Tom had compiled. This is solid, she said. Grant Holloway built that estate in violation of a clear covenant. You have every right to pursue action. What kind of action? Several options. We could file for an injunction against further development. We could demand removal of existing structures. Or we could negotiate a settlement that compensates you for the violation. What would you recommend? Honestly, the settlement. Removal would be nearly impossible to enforce, and an injunction won't help you much since the estate is already built. But a settlement? She smiled. We could negotiate something substantial, enough to make Mr. Holloway very uncomfortable. How substantial? Millions, maybe tens of millions, depending on how the case develops. The covenant violation is clear. Any competent attorney would advise him to settle rather than risk a court battle. I thought about it. Millions of dollars, financial security for life, the ability to walk away from everything and start fresh. But it wasn't about the money. What if I don't want a cash settlement? I asked. Janet raised an eyebrow. What do you want? The property, the estate, all of it. She leaned back in her chair. That's ambitious. Is it possible? Theoretically, yes. You own the subsurface rights. He violated the covenant by building without permission. You could argue that the violation is so fundamental that it voids his surface ownership. But Marcus, that kind of case would be brutal. It would take years. It would cost a fortune in legal fees. What if I don't care about that? Then you're either very brave or very angry. Maybe both. Janet studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right, let's do it. But I need you to understand something. A case like this gets messy. Grant Holloway will fight back hard. He'll use every resource he has. And if your wife is involved with him, she paused. This could get personal in ways you're not prepared for. It's already personal. Fair enough. She pulled out a legal pad. Let's start with a demand letter. We'll outline your claim and give him 30 days to respond. That should get his attention. We spent 2 hours drafting the letter. When we finished, it was clear and direct. Marcus Reed, rightful owner of subsurface and mineral rights, was notifying Grant Holloway of covenant violations and demanding immediate resolution. Janet would send it certified mail the next day. Once he gets this, things will move fast, she warned. Be prepared. I went home and waited. The letter was delivered on a Thursday. I knew because Tom called me at work. Holloway's lawyer just called. They want to meet. When? Tomorrow. They're pushing for immediate resolution. Good. Marcus, are you sure about this? Yeah. Because once we sit down with them, there's no taking it back. They'll know you're serious. I am serious. Tom was quiet for a moment. Okay. I'll set it up. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon at Janet's office. I took a half day off work, showered, put on clean clothes. Not the department store suit, just jeans and a button-down shirt. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Janet met me in the conference room. They're bringing 3 attorneys, Barbara Chen, who you spoke with before, plus 2 specialists in property law. They're not messing around. Neither are we. Good, she smiled. Remember, we have the stronger position. Don't let them intimidate you. Grant's lawyers arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. Barbara Chen led the group, mid-40s, expensive suit, cold handshake. The 2 specialists were younger, carrying briefcases full of documents. Grant wasn't with them. Neither was Evelyn. We sat on opposite sides of the conference table. Barbara started. Mr. Reed, my client is willing to offer a substantial settlement to resolve this matter quickly and quietly. How substantial? Janet asked. $2 million, cash, paid within 30 days. I didn't blink. No. I'm sorry? I said no. Barbara glanced at her associates. Mr. Reed, that's a very generous offer for what amounts to a minor covenant technicality. It's not a technicality. Your client built an estate on land he doesn't fully own. That's a violation. We disagree with that interpretation. The subsurface rights are separate from... Save it, Janet interrupted. We're not here to debate legal theory. My client has a clear claim. Your client violated the covenant. The question is what Mr. Holloway is willing to do about it. Barbara's jaw tightened. What does your client want? I leaned forward. The property, the full estate, complete ownership transfer. Silence. Then Barbara laughed. Actually laughed. That's absurd. Is it? Mr. Reed, that estate is worth over $40 million. You're asking my client to hand it over because of a 70-year-old covenant that was never properly enforced. Yes. That's not going to happen. Then we'll see you in court. Barbara's smile disappeared. A lawsuit would take years. It would cost you everything you have. And you'd lose. Maybe, maybe not. Mr. Reed, she leaned forward. Let me be very clear. If you pursue this, my client will fight back with every resource at his disposal. He will destroy you financially. He will destroy your reputation. And he will make sure your wife's company never receives another dollar of funding. There it was, the threat I'd been waiting for. My wife made her choice, I said quietly. That's not my problem anymore. Barbara's eyes narrowed. You're willing to ruin her out of spite? I'm willing to claim what's rightfully mine. If that ruins her, she should have thought about that before. The meeting ended 10 minutes later. No agreement, no compromise, just lines drawn in the sand. As we left, Janet put a hand on my shoulder. That went well. How? Because they're scared. Barbara Chen doesn't make threats unless she's worried, and she's very worried. What happens now? Now we file the lawsuit, make this official. She smiled. And then we watch Grant Holloway realize he doesn't own the ground he stands on. I drove home as the sun set, painting the sky orange and red. My phone rang. Evelyn, I answered. What did you do? Her voice was shaking. I filed a claim on property that belongs to me. You're suing Grant? Yes. Marcus, this is insane. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly. You're going to destroy everything. My company, my reputation, my future. Your future with Grant, you mean? Silence. Long and heavy. It's not what you think, she said finally. Then what is it? It's complicated. No, Evelyn, it's actually very simple. You chose him over me. You chose money and status over our marriage. You chose to stay silent while he humiliated me. Those aren't complicated choices. They're just choices. He said he'd cut my funding if I defended you. He said, and you believed him. You trusted him more than you trusted us. I pulled into my driveway. That's not complicated. That's just sad. Marcus, please, if you do this, I'll lose everything. You already lost everything. You just haven't realized it yet. What does that mean? It means Grant is using you. He's having an affair with you to control me, to keep me quiet about the property, and the moment it stops being useful, he'll throw you away. That's not true. Ask his wife. She's divorcing him, by the way. Did he mention that? Another silence. Lydia's divorcing him? Yep, she told me herself. Also told me about you and Grant. I got out of the car. So, you can stop pretending. Marcus? I'm done, Evelyn. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with feeling like I'm not good enough. I'm done with all of it. So what? You're just going to sue him? Ruin his life? I'm going to take back what's mine. If that ruins his life, that's his problem. And what about me? I stood in my driveway looking at the house we'd bought together, the life we'd built, the future we'd planned, all of it built on sand. You made your choice, I said. Now you get to live with it. I hung up. Inside, the house was dark and quiet. I turned on the lights, made dinner, sat at the table alone. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from Evelyn, calls from unknown numbers. I ignored all of it. Around midnight, someone knocked on the door. I looked through the peephole. Grant stood on my porch, hands in his pockets, face tight with anger. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. You're making a mistake, Marcus. A huge mistake. How so? This lawsuit? It's going to backfire on you. I have the best lawyers in the state. I have unlimited resources. You'll spend everything you have and lose anyway. Maybe. There's no maybe about it. You can't win this. We'll see. Grant stepped closer. Listen to me carefully. Drop the lawsuit. Take the settlement money. Walk away. If you do that, I'll make sure Evelyn's company stays funded. She'll be fine. You'll be fine. Everyone wins. And if I don't? His eyes went cold. Then I'll destroy both of you. I looked at him. This man who thought money made him powerful, who thought he could humiliate people without consequences, who thought he owned the world. You're standing on my land, I said quietly. Your house, your estate, your empire, all of it is built on ground that belongs to me, and you didn't even know it. That's a technicality. No, it's a fact, and facts don't care about your lawyers or your money or your threats. I stepped back. Get off my porch, Grant, and get ready to get off my land. I closed the door in his face, stood there listening to his footsteps fade away, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The lawsuit was filed on Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, it was all over the local business news. Tech investor faces property dispute. Covenant violation threatens historic estate. The reporters loved it. Rich man versus working man. Old money versus old land. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. I turned it off. Tom came by that evening with pizza and beer. We sat on my back porch and watched the sun go down. You're famous now, he said. I don't want to be famous. Too late. Channel 7 wants an interview. Not happening. Probably smart. He took a drink. Grant's people are already spinning it, saying you're a gold digger, an opportunist trying to exploit a legal loophole. Let them say what they want. You sure you're ready for this? It's going to get ugly. I thought about everything I was risking, my privacy, my peace, maybe even my job if Grant had enough influence. But then I thought about the gala, about standing there in my cheap suit while people laughed, about Evelyn's silence, about Grant's smug face. I'm ready, I said. The next few weeks moved like a storm. Grant's lawyers filed motion after motion, trying to dismiss the case, trying to delay discovery, trying to intimidate us with paperwork and procedure. Janet handled it all with calm, efficiency. She'd been doing this for 30 years. She'd seen every trick. They're scared, she told me during one of our meetings. All this noise, it's because they know we have a strong case. How strong? Strong enough that they should have settled. The covenant is clear. The violation is documented. Any reasonable judge will see that. So why are they fighting? Because Grant Holloway doesn't lose. Not publicly. Not to someone like you. She smiled slightly. His ego won't let him. The discovery phase started. Both sides exchanged documents. Janet requested everything: building permits, title insurance, construction records, correspondence about the property. What we found was interesting. Grant's people had known about the covenant issue from the beginning. There were internal emails discussing it, legal memos outlining the risk. They'd decided to build anyway, assuming they could fix it later or that nobody would notice. They'd gambled, and they'd lost. This is good for us, Janet said. It shows knowledge and intent. They can't claim ignorance. What does that mean? It means we can argue for punitive damages. They knowingly violated the covenant. That strengthens our position significantly. I met with Janet twice a week. We prepared for depositions, reviewed strategy, built our case brick by brick. At work, things got complicated. My boss called me into his office one morning. Marcus, I need to ask you something. Okay. This lawsuit you're involved in, is it going to be a problem? A problem how? We just got a call from Holloway Capital. They're one of the investors in this development project. They're concerned about potential conflicts. My stomach tightened. Grant is trying to get me fired? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. My boss sighed. Look, I don't want to lose you. You're a good foreman. But I can't have this turning into a situation that affects the project. It won't. Can you promise me that? Yes. He studied me for a long moment. All right, but Marcus, be careful. Men like Grant Holloway have long memories. I went back to work, but the message was clear. Grant was coming after everything: my job, my reputation, anything he could reach. He wanted me to break. That night, Evelyn texted me. Can we talk? Please? I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the part that had loved her for 7 years, needed to know. When? Tomorrow night? Our house? It's my house now. Please, Marcus. I agreed to meet at 7. She arrived exactly on time. I watched through the window as she parked, sat in her car for a minute, then walked to the door. She looked thin, tired. Her hair wasn't styled like usual. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. She looked more like the woman I'd married. I opened the door before she could knock. "Hi," she said. "Hi?" We went inside. She stood in the living room like she didn't know where to sit. Finally settled on the couch. I took the chair across from her. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. "What do you want, Evelyn?" "I want to explain." "Explain what? The affair? The betrayal? Which part needs explaining?" She flinched. "All of it. None of it. I don't know anymore." "That's honest, at least." She looked down at her hands. "I made a mistake. A huge mistake. With Grant." "How long?" "It started about a month ago. After the gala." She wiped her eyes. "He was there for me when you weren't. He understood the pressure I was under. He made me feel like I mattered." "You did matter. To me." "I know. But I was so focused on proving myself, on showing everyone I belonged in that world. And you—" She paused. "You represented everything I was trying to move away from." The words hit like a punch. "I represented what?" I asked quietly. "Normal. Simple. Working class." She was crying now. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I know how that sounds. I know how terrible that is, but I was ashamed of where I came from, of not being born into money. And when Grant made that comment about your suit, I should have defended you, but instead I felt embarrassed, like your presence there was exposing something about me I wanted to hide. So you chose to hide with him instead. I chose wrong. I chose everything wrong." She looked up at me. "The affair, it wasn't about love. It wasn't even about attraction. It was about access, about feeling like I belonged to something bigger than myself. And now Grant won't return my calls. He cut off my funding 2 weeks ago, said my company was too risky given the current legal situation." She laughed bitterly. "Lydia was right. I was just a tool to him, a way to control you. I tried to tell you that. I know. I didn't listen." She stood up, pacing. "Nina told me to file for divorce, to get ahead of this before it gets worse. My lawyers said the same thing. What do you want to do?" "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." She turned to face me. "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I'm disappointed. I'm hurt. But I don't hate you." "Do you still love me?" That was harder. I looked at her. This woman I'd built a life with, who'd once laughed at my jokes and fallen asleep on my shoulder and promised to stand beside me no matter what. That woman felt like a memory now. "I love who you used to be," I said. "I don't know who you are now." She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. "What happens to us?" "I don't know. That's up to you." "What about the lawsuit? If you win, if you take Grant's estate—" She paused. "I'll lose everything too, my reputation, my investors, any chance of rebuilding my company." "You're asking me to drop the case?" "I'm asking you to consider what it will cost. Not just Grant, but me, us, everything we built together." I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet. Ordinary houses, ordinary lives. Nobody out there was fighting over $40 million or historic estates or betrayed marriages. "I spent years feeling like I wasn't enough," I said without turning around. "Not rich enough, not sophisticated enough, not worthy of the world you wanted to be part of." And I accepted that. I tried to be supportive. I tried to understand. Marcus, but at that gala, I realized something. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It's that you were ashamed of me, and you let other people see that shame. You let Grant humiliate me because defending me would have cost you something. I turned to look at her. "That's not love, Evelyn. That's not partnership. That's just using someone until they're no longer convenient. That's not fair, isn't it? She wiped her eyes. So what? You're going to destroy Grant to punish me? I'm not trying to punish anyone. I'm trying to take back something that belongs to me. The land, my dignity, my self-respect. I crossed my arms. If that affects you, it's because you tied yourself to the wrong person. I was tied to you first, and you untied yourself. You chose Grant. You chose his world, his promises, his bed. Those were your decisions. Now you get to live with the consequences. She stood there for a long moment, then picked up her purse. I'll have my lawyer send over divorce papers, she said quietly. Okay. I'm sorry, Marcus. For all of it. Me too. She left. I stood in the empty living room and felt the weight of it settle. 7 years. Gone. Just like that. But underneath the sadness was something else. Relief. The deposition started in May. I sat in a conference room with lawyers and a court reporter and answered questions for 6 hours. Where did I acquire the property? When did I learn about the estate? What were my intentions? I told the truth. Simple, clear, no embellishment. Grant's lawyers tried to trip me up, tried to make me seem greedy or vindictive, but I didn't bite, just answered each question calmly. Janet was pleased. You did great. They got nothing. Grant's deposition was 2 weeks later. I wasn't allowed to attend, but Janet told me about it afterward. He was arrogant, she said, kept dismissing the covenant as irrelevant, said the property was his regardless of technicalities. That helps us? Immensely. Judges don't like arrogance, especially when the facts don't support it. The case moved forward. Both sides filed briefs, argued motions, prepared for trial. And slowly, Grant's world began to crack. The divorce from Lydia went public. She got half of everything, including a significant stake in the estate. That complicated his legal position even further. Then, the business press started digging. Turned out Grant had a pattern of questionable real estate deals, properties acquired through intimidation or legal manipulation. Our case opened the door for others to come forward. His reputation, built on being untouchable, started to crumble. I watched it happen from a distance, didn't celebrate, didn't gloat, just watched. Tom called me one evening in June. You see the news? No, what happened? Grant pulled his stake from 3 major projects, including the one our company is working on. Word is he's liquidating assets, getting ready to settle. Janet hasn't heard anything. She will. Trust me, he's drowning Marcus, and he knows it. The settlement offer came 2 days later. Barbara Chen called Janet directly. My client is prepared to make a substantial offer. We met in Janet's conference room, same setup as before, but this time, the energy was different. Barbara looked tired. Mr. Holloway is willing to transfer full ownership of the estate to Mr. Reed. In exchange, Mr. Reed drops all claims and signs a confidentiality agreement. I looked at Janet. She looked at me. What about compensation for the past violations? She asked. Included in the transfer. The property is worth $43 million. That's more than adequate compensation. And Evelyn's company? Barbara frowned. What about it? Mr. Reed wants assurance that Grant Holloway will not interfere with or retaliate against his ex-wife's business ventures. That's not part of this negotiation. It is now, I said. Barbara studied me. You're protecting her? After everything? I'm making sure this ends clean. Grant leaves her alone. He leaves me alone. We all move on. That can be arranged. We spent 3 hours hammering out details. By the end, we had an agreement. Full transfer of the estate. No strings. No contingencies. Grant would vacate within 60 days, and Evelyn would be left alone to rebuild her company without his interference. I signed the papers. It was over. The news broke the next day. Blue-collar worker wins historic estate in property dispute. The story went national. Local news, business channels, social media. Everyone wanted to interview me. I declined them all. This wasn't about publicity. It was never about publicity. It was about respect. Evelyn called once. I answered. I heard about the settlement, she said. Yeah? Thank you for including the protection clause. You're welcome. Silence. What are you going to do with the estate? She asked. I don't know yet. Haven't thought that far ahead. It's a beautiful property. It is. More silence. I hope you find what you're looking for, Marcus. You too, Evelyn. We hung up. That was the last time we spoke. The divorce was finalized in July. Clean. Simple. We'd agreed to everything in mediation. She took her company, her car, some of the furniture. I took the house and the estate. No alimony, no drama. Just two people who'd run out of road. On a Saturday morning in August, I drove out to the estate for the first time as its owner. The gates opened automatically. Janet had given me the codes. I drove slowly up the long driveway, past the gardens and the oak trees, toward the house. It looked different in the morning light, less imposing, more like what it was, just a building on land that had always belonged to my family. I parked and got out, walked around the grounds, the reflecting pool, the terrace where Grant had mocked my suit, the ballroom where I'd felt so small. All of it quiet now, empty. I stood on the front steps and looked out at the rolling hills. This was the land my great-grandfather had worked, the land my grandfather had protected by keeping those subsurface rights, the land that had waited quietly for someone to remember its worth. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom. How does it feel? I thought about it. How did it feel? Not triumphant, not vengeful, not even particularly happy, just settled. Feels like the end of something, I typed back. What's next? Good question. I looked at the estate. $43 million worth of property. More money than I'd ever dreamed of. More space than I'd ever need. I could sell it, take the money, and disappear, start over somewhere new. Or I could stay, turn it into something different, something that mattered. I didn't know yet, but I had time to figure it out. I drove home that afternoon and made dinner, sat on my back porch with a beer and watched the sunset. My phone stayed quiet. No texts from Evelyn, no calls from lawyers, no crisis to manage. Just peace, the kind of peace that comes after a storm. The next few weeks were routine, work, home, simple living. I started going to the estate once a week, walking the property, thinking about possibilities. Sometimes Tom came with me. Sometimes I went alone. You could turn it into a community center, Tom suggested one afternoon, or a school, something that gives back. Maybe. Or you could just live there. Big house for one person, but hell, why not? It doesn't feel like mine yet. Give it time. One Saturday morning, I was at the estate walking the grounds when I saw a car coming up the driveway. Silver sedan. Familiar. Evelyn. She parked near the house and got out slowly, saw me standing by the reflecting pool. I'm sorry, she called out. I should have called first. It's okay. What are you doing here? She walked over. I wanted to see it, one last time. She looked around. It's still beautiful. Yeah. We stood in awkward silence. How are you? She asked. Good. You? Getting there. I found new investors for the company. Smaller backing, but it's mine. Really mine this time. That's good. Yeah. She smiled slightly. Turns out I'm better on my own than I thought. You always were. You just forgot for a while. She looked at me. I'm sorry, Marcus, for everything. I know I've said it before, but I mean it. You deserved better than what I gave you. We both deserved better. Yeah, we did. She turned back to the house. What are you going to do with this place? Still deciding. It suits you more than it ever suited Grant. Strange how that works. Not really. It was always my family's land. I was just born too late to know it. She nodded. I should go. Evelyn? She turned back. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. I really do. Her eyes filled with tears. You too. She drove away. I watched her car disappear down the driveway and felt something shift inside me. Not closure exactly, more like acceptance. We'd loved each other once, built something real. But people change, circumstances change. Sometimes love isn't enough to bridge the distance that creates. That wasn't tragic. It was just true. I walked back to my truck and headed home. Over the next months, life found its rhythm. I kept my job, liked the work, liked the simplicity of building things that would last. I visited the estate regularly, started making small changes, fixed things that needed fixing, cleared overgrown paths, made it feel less like a museum and more like a place someone could live. Tom came by one evening with beers and sat with me on the estate's terrace, the same terrace where Grant had humiliated me. You ever think about what would have happened if you just let it go? He asked. Taken the first settlement offer and walked away? Sometimes. Would you have been happier? I thought about it. No, because I would have known. I would have known I let them win. Let them keep treating people like they didn't matter. So this was worth it? All the stress, the fighting, everything? I looked out at the land, the hills rolling into the distance, the old oak trees, the earth that had belonged to my family for generations. Yeah, I said, it was worth it. Good. Tom raised his beer. To standing your ground. To standing your ground. We drank and watched the sun set over the property. My property. One morning in late September, I woke up early and drove to the estate. The air was cool, autumn, starting to show itself in the trees. I made coffee in the kitchen, a space that still felt too grand but was slowly becoming familiar. Took it outside to the terrace and sat in one of the old chairs. The estate was quiet, just birds and wind. No parties, no champagne, no people in expensive clothes laughing at other people's pain. Just peace. I thought about Grant sometimes, wondered where he'd ended up. Tom said he'd moved to New York, bought a smaller place, was rebuilding his reputation slowly. I didn't wish him ill. I just didn't think about him much. Evelyn posted on social media occasionally. Her company was growing. She looked happy in the photos, confident, like she'd found herself again. Good for her. Some mornings when I was at the estate early, I'd see a car drive slowly past on the road. Silver sedan. It would slow down, pause, then continue on. I never waved, never acknowledged it. But I knew she was checking, making sure I was okay, making sure the place where everything had fallen apart, was still standing. It was, and so was I. The quiet victory Tom had promised wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic. It was just this, sitting on a terrace that had once made me feel small, drinking coffee on land that had always been mine, watching the sun rise over a future I'd built with patience and dignity instead of anger and revenge. Some people would say, I won, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt like finding solid ground after years of standing on sand. It felt like remembering who I was before the world tried to tell me I wasn't enough. It felt like home. I finished my coffee and stood up. There was work to do, plans to make, a life to build. But first, I walked the property one more time, touched the old oak trees, felt the earth beneath my feet. This land had waited 70 years for someone to remember its value. I wasn't going to forget again. The morning was quiet. The sky was clear. And for the first time, in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. The end.